Have you ever felt like you were working tirelessly, yet catching nothing? Like your efforts were sinking into an endless void, leaving you empty-handed and weary? This is the story of a man who faced the same struggle, until one encounter changed everything. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon, casting a golden glow on the Sea of Galilee. Simon Peter sat in his boat, his calloused hands gripping the edges as he stared at the empty nets draped over the side. The night had been long, and the waters, once abundant with fish, had yielded nothing. His shoulders ached, his spirit was heavy, and his mind raced with worries. How would he provide for his family? How would he pay his debts? The weight of failure pressed down on him like an anchor. As he stepped onto the shore, he noticed a crowd gathering nearby. Curiosity tugged at him, and he walked closer. There, standing on the edge of the water, was a man named Jesus. His presence was magnetic, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed to cut through the morning chill. The people hung on his every word, their faces filled with hope and wonder. Jesus, seeing the crowd pressing in on him, glanced at Simon's boat. He stepped into it and asked Simon to push it out a little from the shore. From there, he began to teach the people, his words flowing like a river of life. Simon listened, his heart stirred by the authority and compassion in Jesus' voice. But when the teaching ended, Jesus turned to Simon and said something that would change his life forever. "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon blinked, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. "Master," he replied, "we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets." It was a moment of decision. Simon could have dismissed the request. After all, he was the fisherman, and Jesus was a carpenter turned teacher. What did he know about fishing? But something in Simon's heart told him to trust. Maybe it was the way Jesus looked at him, as if he could see the struggles and doubts hidden beneath the surface. Maybe it was the faint glimmer of hope that had been reignited by Jesus' words. Whatever it was, Simon obeyed. He rowed the boat back into the deep water, his muscles protesting with every stroke. His brother Andrew joined him, and together they let down the nets. The water rippled as the nets sank, and for a moment there was silence. Then suddenly the nets grew heavy, so heavy that they began to tear. Fish swarmed into them, their silvery bodies glinting in the sunlight. Simon and Andrew shouted to their partners, James and John, for help. Soon both boats were filled to the brim, so much so that they began to sink under the weight of the catch. Simon fell to his knees in the boat, overwhelmed. "Go away from me, Lord," he said, his voice trembling. "I am a sinful man." In that moment, he realized he was in the presence of someone far greater than he had ever imagined. Jesus wasn't just a teacher or a miracle worker. He was the Lord of creation, the one who could command the fish of the sea and the winds of the heavens. But Jesus didn't turn away. Instead, he looked at Simon with eyes full of grace and said, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." That day, Simon Peter left everything, his boat, his nets, his livelihood, and followed Jesus. He became one of the greatest disciples, a rock upon which the early church was built. But it all started with a simple act of obedience, a willingness to trust even when it didn't make sense. This story, found in Luke 5:1-11, is more than just a miracle. It's a powerful reminder that our breakthroughs often come when we least expect them and when we're willing to step out in faith. Simon Peter had every reason to doubt. He was tired, discouraged, and at the end of his rope. But when Jesus spoke, he chose to trust. And that decision led to a miracle that not only transformed his life, but also impacted countless others. So if you're feeling like Simon, like you've been working hard but catching nothing, remember this: Jesus sees you. He knows your struggles, your doubts, and your fears. And he's asking you to trust him, to step out into the deep water and let down your nets. It might not make sense. It might not be easy. But when you obey, you open the door to miracles. Lessons from the story. 1. Obedience leads to breakthroughs. Simon Peter's miracle came when he obeyed Jesus' seemingly illogical command. Sometimes God asks us to do things that don't make sense in the moment, but his plans are always greater than ours. 2. Faith over fear. Simon's initial response was fear and unworthiness, but Jesus reassured him, no matter how inadequate you feel, God can use you for His purposes. 3. The power of trust. Simon's trust in Jesus led to a miraculous catch. When we trust God, even in our failures, He can turn our emptiness into abundance. 4. A call to greater purpose. Jesus didn't just provide fish. He called Simon to a greater mission. Our breakthroughs are often stepping stones to a higher calling. Closing thought. The next time you feel like you're fishing in empty waters, remember Simon Peter's story. Jesus is still in the business of turning our nothing into more than enough. All He asks is that we trust Him and take the first step. Who knows? Your miracle might be just one obedient decision away.